Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation presented by White House Custom Color.
Are you trying to mute me? No, it's just you're real loud, and I can't.
I sold Amazon, but it was $25.
Listening to listen, not listening to respond.
Yes. Oh, thank you for that.
Can you answer some questions for me about Lightroom a little bit?
I can try.
Maybe.
Yes.
Lightroom to me has been fascinating. I've always been a Photoshop guy. And then when they announced Lightroom, I think I was one of the people that introduced it at WPPI. I don't know how long ago that was. It was like 2008, I feel like, or 9. I don't know.
Yeah, 2006 is when Lightroom was in beta, I think.
Yeah, well, maybe it was 2007 then. It was a long time ago. But we were on this team and we talk about Lightroom. And Lightroom has evolved into such a robust application now, right? It used to be, Photoshop's going to do most of your work, and then you can use Lightroom to cull stuff and bring stuff in, and then there's more features in Lightroom, and so I feel like that balance of power over time has shifted for the majority of photographers into Lightroom to the point where now it's like you don't need Photoshop hardly at all, and most people don't need it maybe at all because Lightroom can do so much. Is that a fair assessment in your mind, how things have kind of swung?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lightroom was a program created by photographers for photographers. So as you know, Photoshop is incredibly robust. It does so many things, but it's
a lot of different things. Right.
It wasn't made for photographers. Photographers can use it. And of course, people who are into doing more manipulations with their images absolutely need it. But the average photographer doesn't need 99% or more of the functionality of Photoshop. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
You don't need, I know how to do 10 things in Photoshop because I can accomplish what I need to do with my photos with basically those 10 things.
Right.
But Lightroom, I use almost every feature of Lightroom because every feature of Lightroom is in some way relevant for photography specifically. So absolutely your assessment is correct that sure, Lightroom when it first came out was not it wasn't full featured. So I was using it as a beta user I came on right when it was first released. Sorry, my friend who introduced me was a beta user and he was showing me how to use it. I came on right when it was first released. And the story that Julianne Kost likes to tell, I'm sure you're familiar with everybody who is into Lightroom knows her.
I know Julianne, yeah.
Yeah, so Julianne is incredible. And what Julianne always says, she reminds people who always say, hey, of course, there's this new Lightroom cloud-based ecosystem as well as Lightroom Classic. Yeah. So, hey, where are all these features that we still need? What Julianne always says, they're coming, right? They're coming. When Lightroom Classic was first released, it didn't even have a crop tool.
Right.
So, as time has gone on, more and more features have been added. And this is why the idea of a subscription service makes so much more sense.
Yes.
Because we're adding so many new things all the time. We have releases throughout the year where new features are being added. And actually, I don't know if we're still planning on talking about Lightroom specifically or having me show you some stuff, but we had Adobe Max this week, our big creative conference. And I don't know if you were able to tune into any of that part or any of those sessions.
I was not. But so if there's something really cool, I'd like to know.
Yeah, there's some cool new features of Lightroom that were released this week. So if we have time and you want to go through that, I'm happy to show you that. But if we were not on this sort of subscription service, we know at Adobe, we know a lot of people complain about the subscription service. But when it comes to a software program that we're just constantly improving upon, a subscription service just makes the most sense, right?
It makes a tremendous amount of sense. I was actually wanting to that was the big thing that was kind of like my big thing to get to is the subscription part because I have heard, and it's one of the big things that people come to me and talk about too, is the subscription. The model is so much better than it used to be. And some of these people they weren't even photographers or they weren't even in the mix when it used to be, an update every 18 months and you drop another $600, right? Where it's just like, is it still $10 a month for both, or is it $10 a month for each?
So. Yeah, I think it's $9.99 is
$9.99
the photography plan. Yeah,
for both of them. That is peanuts. It's such a good deal.
It's like 2 cups of coffee a month, right? You can afford it if you're, most people can afford this.
It's so easy to integrate that into like your cost of doing business. Like you have these 2 mammoth applications that are capable of doing so much for you. That's $10 a month. I mean, I don't even think there's another. I don't even have a thing to compare it to. It's such an incredible value in my opinion, right? And then you don't have to worry about updates or having to pay more for upgrades because you just get them and you don't have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
and a lot of people who complain about having to subscribe are subscribers of things like Netflix, right? And they don't complain about that. They get all of their shows on demand whenever they want. They don't complain about what they have to pay for that. But when it comes to a software program, there are complaints. But
that's a good analogy because Netflix can even cost even more than that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I actually, if you do have something to show me, I would love to see it.
Yeah. So a couple things. I mean, of course, with any new release, there's typically performance improvements. So those are hard to really describe. And I'm honestly not, I'm not on the product team, so I wouldn't be able to get into the specifics of what those
but
are.
It's faster.
It's usually like things load faster. They're much more smooth, that sort of thing. There's always performance upgrades in that sense. But the biggest thing that was released this week that I'll start with is color grading. So color grading replaces split toning. So if you were familiar with split toning before, you were essentially, scrolling inside instead of on this panel. But
wow, what?
Yeah. So with color grading with split toning before, you were adjusting the color tone of basically just your shadows and your highlights, right?
Yep.
So this is just split toning, but more robust.
There's more to it.
We've added a mid-tone color wheel. So now you can control shadow tones, mid-tone color tones, and highlight color tones all separately. There's also, so you could do each individually here, shadows, mid-tones, highlights. And with any of them, of course, you can kind of, you could pull this, really drag
I'm really a big fan of the interface too.
Yeah, the interface is great. Just drag your dot anywhere you want it to be based on what your color choice is. And then once you've made your color choice selection, you can it'll lock it in and you'll pull up and down that axis alone for saturation.
Oh, I see.
And then you can also have let me make this a little bit more noticeable.
Right.
You also have a luminance slider. So you can make, pull your sort of the brightness up and down of those tones. And
so split toning has been tremendously upgraded, essentially.
Split tone has been tremendously upgraded for those people who have presets or specific edits that they've already done using split toning. And now we have introduced this new tool. Don't panic because you're still going to have the presets will still work. All of your edits will still be there because essentially they will still show up here in shadows and highlights. And then the other piece is for the way that split toning worked before, this blending, we didn't have a blending slider, but the blending would have been all the way at 100. So that doesn't look good here because I haven't actually edited it properly.
Right.
But basically what happened before with split toning will show up in shadows and highlights. And then to get it to look identical, it'll push the blending all the way to 100. So all of your presets will still work in the same way.
But then you'll have the ability to customize that piece even and drop blending down too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have much more control because of that blending slider. So really quickly, in addition to these individual wheels that I mentioned, shadows, midtones, and highlights, there's also a global color wheel. So it just kind of takes care of the global colors. And then of course, double clicking resets it to 0. Let me reset this into 0 too, because it's kind of weird. Actually, let's go here. And I'm still, I'm not great at color grading. It's still kind of new to me. So I still just kind of play around a lot and see what kind of feels good or looks good to me. So
Got that matrix look up in the greens and the yellows.
Yeah, I kind of like that. It's actually two. I don't know how much I like this, but the blending.
Well, but you're giving
slider,
a really good example of all the different things that can be manipulated individually. That's impressive to me.
And the blending slider then, basically, if it's at 0, or the closer to 0 it is, it keeps all of the colors pretty discrete. So the color tones within shadows are pretty separated from the color tones and midtones, and then likewise the highlights. But as you push those more towards 100, everything starts to kind of blend together a lot more. So
very good.
I would say that the best thing to do is to just go in there and play with it. Just push things around and see what happens. Obviously, Lightroom is non-destructive, so you're not going to hurt anything, and everything can be undone. And then there's the balance slider as well. So just kind of how much of your image is being designated as a shadow versus a highlight. So how much weight are you placing on each of the different.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So that's the balance between highlight and shadow. Yeah.
Right. So the more you specify your image, so my shadows are kind of green. So if I say, hey, more of my image should be considered a shadow, it'll look more green. And then vice versa, my highlights are kind of pinkish. So the more of my image is considered a highlight, the more pink it'll be.
Sure. I get that. Wonderful. Yeah, that's a huge feature.
That's the biggest new feature that showed up. And there's another one. So right now I'm demoing. So this is another thing that is important to talk about. Lightroom Classic versus Lightroom. I'm sure it's come up at some point in your conversations with people, and I don't know how much we want to talk about it today. Color grading.
What are you going to say?
Okay. So, what I'm demoing here is Lightroom on desktop. So it's not Lightroom Classic, but the new color grading feature was also released in Lightroom Classic as well. Okay. So it's identical. It's identical across the different programs, as well as the different surfaces of Lightroom, which is a cloud-based ecosystem and syncs across your devices, right?
Right.
So for those people, if people are watching and they're like, wait, my Lightroom doesn't look like this, they might be in Lightroom Classic. So I just wanted to point that out. So we don't need to go too deep, because I don't want to confuse people or like launch us into this like really complex conversation. Right. The other feature that I want to show you that's kind of cool is it's exclusive to Lightroom. Yeah. So it's not in Lightroom Classic. Okay. And one of the reasons that's the case is because it utilizes artificial intelligence so Adobe Sensei to determine what your best photos are. And Lightroom Classic right now doesn't utilize Adobe Sensei in that same way. So let me pop over. Actually, I think I have to stop sharing. Let me stop sharing this screen and then share a browser window with Lightroom. So now we're in Lightroom Web. And the reason I popped over to Lightroom Web is because this feature is not yet available on Lightroom Desktop. It is available on the web and also on mobile devices. So any, iPhone, Android, tablet versions of Lightroom, but just not on desktop. So the feature I want to talk about is called Best Photos. So basically it's like using machine learning to pre-cull your images for you. And the way that you get to it is, so I have this album, it has, I think, 89 images in it. And on the top right, there are 3 dots. When I click those, it gives me an option to choose best photos. And it will basically analyze the album based on certain parameters that were set. And at the top, you can see that 34 of them were chosen as my best images. 56 of them are in this other category of not chosen images. But I could also change things like, going from 89 to 34, maybe that's not enough. Maybe I need my quality threshold to be higher. So as I increase it, you'll see that my number of chosen images decreases. And again, if I go higher, even more. So
I feel like this is the future.
Yeah, it absolutely is the future.
I'm looking at the future right now. It's kind of freaking me out. So, okay, so there's that woman there, right? The second
Yeah.
image.
Yep.
And I noticed on the other, when you had all of them pulled up, that there were at least 2 images of her, right?
Yeah. In the original album.
Yeah. Is there any way that you could go there and I'm just super curious, like how it chooses those 2?
Great question. So it's a combination of timestamp, because it analyzes, of course, burst images, right?
Yeah.
So images, I think it's something like a 90-second window where they might group them together and then select the best of that clump or cluster of images. So there's a timestamp component. There's also a similarity component. So they'll analyze the images and say 75% of this image is identical to this other image. So we might choose only one of those or fewer of those for that reason.
Boy, that in and of itself would help tremendously, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Then there's also some added more mathematical equation-y things that go on. I saw a presentation about this, but those are the 2 takeaways that I had because they made sense to me as a user, as a non-engineer, right?
Well, I appreciate the layman's language too, right? I don't need to know about all the equations. I just know they exist.
So time clustering and similarity clustering, it pulls based on that. Then also down here at the bottom, you can also choose to emphasize images with people. So you can get more people or fewer people. So you can even, actually, I don't know if that changed much. Let's see.
Well, I saw some things disappearing.
Yeah, some changed. So more people.
More, for sure. That's unreal.
Yeah, so it's really cool. That's one of the new things that we're really excited about.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well, it wasn't a thing until this week.
Right. But I mean, in my mind, like the other piece, I can understand how you're taking split toning and you're adding midtones. Like that makes sense to me. But when I say the future, like this is surprising to me because it wasn't even like something that I had considered or fathomed before, that it would be able to do something at least this well. My hope would be like this really, really works well because it's the number one bottleneck in my experience, with workshops and consultations and talking to people all the time. Like, what is it that really slows you down? And it's culling, right?
Yeah.
And it's spending so much time in front of that computer, culling through images. And even just to have something that could take your duplicates or the things that are like 87% the same and hide them or put them off to the side, that in and of itself could be a huge time saver for so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's important to remember that it's still a computer doing this. So,
right.
You still want to, with your human eye, go through and make sure that it's making the right selections for you. But this is an incredible way to start and save a lot of time.
I love it. That's fantastic. Well, thank you for doing that. I didn't expect to have a couple little demos, but that's really awesome.
Absolutely. There's a few other things. I don't know if you want me to show anything else.
If you have them, I'd like to see them.
One of the new tools implemented in this new release is a much more robust zoom functionality. I know that, especially, I think it's across all surfaces of Lightroom, including Lightroom Classic as well. So not just in Lightroom ecosystem, but also in Lightroom Classic. As somebody who's used Lightroom for a long time, I'm sure you're familiar with how clunky the old zoom was, where you would have to select your zoom ratio and stuff like that. Yes. So now if you Command or Control click, if you Command or Control, you'll get a little box and you can zoom in on something within your image. So say I wanted to read what that sign said, right?
Yeah.
So instead of, so it actually is zooming in. So you can see on the bottom right here, when you click on it.
Yeah.
Actually, so let's see. Let's try this again. So when you're zoomed in, it tells you, so right now I'm zooming into like 293%. So, it's just kind of a nicer way to go in instead of having to go in and click, oh, I want to zoom in
No, that's much better.
Percentage.
So an actual tool, it's the zoom tool that gives you that box.
Yeah, so the zoom tool, and then you press Command or Control, depending on what computer you're using. And you can just kind of zoom in and make your selection and go straight there. And then of course, kind of pull it around as you need to.
Nice.
So it's just much smoother than it was, and offers you a lot more control than you used to be able to have.
Yep, that's better.
And then I guess the last thing, there's a couple, a couple other things. We also have auto versions. Do you know about versions?
No.
Okay. So let's go into, I want to use that. I've been using this image as kind of a demo image. So this is my final edited image for color grading as a demo.
Okay.
So at the bottom right here, this is within the Lightroom desktop. You have versions. And as you can see, I've kind of had to, it's almost like making a virtual copy, right? But it's basically saving these specific edits so that you can, it's like a snapshot in Lightroom Classic.
It's like a snapshot in the history palette is what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah. So it saves these edits as you make them, if you want to come back to them, right? So first I have my original, and then I had, this one version, I don't know, do I like it? This was me playing with this image and playing with the new color grading tools. It's another version, yet another one, and then a couple different options here. And so
do each one of those versions contain a history or not? So
that's a good question. I don't know that they do.
I'd be shocked if they did, but that'd be a neat feature.
I feel like they don't. Where is this? So
you can show, it looks like you can show original though.
I can show the original. I'm just trying to think.
Because you have that's also in one of the snapshots too. Yep.
Yeah. I'm also just trying to think about the fact, I jump back and forth between programs all the time. So in Lightroom, there is no history view, is there?
Yeah. Well, there is in Classic.
There is in Classic, absolutely. But I don't think there is.
But not in Lightroom.
In Lightroom. So to answer your question, I don't think each shows a history, because there is no history within Lightroom. But it places your all of your sliders in exactly the position where you left them, right?
Right. So you can still manipulate, obviously.
You can absolutely still manipulate them. So it preserves that edit state. It doesn't preserve your edit history. It preserves that edit state, right?
Now, versions aren't new though, right?
Versions themselves are not new. So versions have existed for a while, but you've always had to go in here and go to create version at the top.
Yeah.
But if you notice now, there is an auto version here. Yeah. So let's do something like, let's make this, let's do something really drastic, like make it, it's interesting because it has all the color grading tools. So I basically desaturated it and took off the color grading. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm not creating a version, but I'm just going to go back to my grid. I'm going to go to this other image and then just pop back to the grid and go here and open that image that I just made a black and white image, and then go into versions, and you'll see that under auto, it auto created this version, this black and white version.
Yes.
So it preserves the state the image was in the last time I left the image.
Oh.
Yeah. So if I've made all these edits and I didn't remember to create a version, and then I change it later, it's okay because it has auto created that version for me. So
it's
auto
still
version
there for
is
you.
Yeah.
Nice. I was
Yeah, so
wondering
it's
why you were
pretty cool.
going to that other image. It's like, what is she doing?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just leaving it and then coming back. I think I
Well,
could
you
have
were you're doing what somebody would do, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and then come and then think, oh no, and then they go back, and then there it is in auto.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Auto versions is new, and then the only other thing I would want to talk about is Learn and Discover. Are you familiar with those? Because those are things that we love to tell, especially new users about.
No, tell me all about them. Tell me all about them.
Yeah. So Learn and Discover are not brand new, but they're new enough that a lot of people don't know about them, and we're of course making them better and better as time goes on. So this is available in Lightroom, not Lightroom Classic, so across all surfaces of Lightroom. Really, really handy on your phone, especially. So that's my favorite way of accessing them, but you can do it here on desktop as well. But Learn is essentially interactive tutorials. So we've been working with a lot of creators to make these tutorials, so you can see this sort of different categories of tutorials that are available. And say you click on one, you can read about what, a little bit of context, see who the creator is, and see what the core features are that they're focusing on. And then you just start your tutorial. And once everything is loaded,
all built in.
It's all built into the product itself and accessible anywhere, like on any of your Lightroom surfaces. So
I love it. I don't have to go to YouTube.
Yeah, it's built in. These tutorials
separate all the wheat from the chaff on YouTube and then get distracted for 5 hours. It's right here in the application.
Yeah, it's cool. So it literally walks you through step by step. So it's like, here is what I'm doing. Like the goal of this is to do this. So we'll start by balancing the exposure. So you hit next, and then what you see is that you actually get these little guide things. So you have to go through step by step.
It tells you what to do, and then you do it.
Yeah.
You're doing that right there.
I'm doing this right here. Yeah. So if I don't touch it, it just shows me.
It doesn't move.
It doesn't move. So I have to physically move the slider to do the action that it's telling you to do. So it just is a really great way of just like, if you're brand new to Lightroom and you're super overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, this is a really cool thing to just get you into it, and in a way that doesn't make you feel scared, right? Because obviously if you're just literally following what somebody else is telling you to do, it's super easy. So we have these tutorials.
That's under Learn. This is Learn.
That's under Learn. Yeah. So on the top left, I was showing you Learn. So they're all the tutorials that are available. And then under Discover is a little bit different. So it's brand new. We're kind of calling it the beta of our in-app community. So the idea, as a creator, you can have your own profile. So it's kind of building in a little bit of social networking within Lightroom. But as a creator, you can have your own profile, and you can submit your edits, basically. So you can show other people how you've edited your image. So if we just tap into one, it essentially plays the edit like a time lapse. So it's kind of cool, but sometimes honestly it's like, oh my God, it's maybe like too fast. I don't know what's happening. Yeah. But you can also, at any point in time, you can just go through and hear, like, again, this is available on your phone. I really like it on the phone, but you can just hover your mouse over, or you click on it. Actually, sorry, on the web, on desktop here, you can just click on it, and you can literally click down, 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 and see exactly step by step what this photographer has done. So it's a really nice way to get inspired, to see how other people are using Lightroom if you don't know. And then the secret, it's not an Easter egg, but it's kind of hidden because people don't know, is that you can save these edits as a preset.
Come on.
And there are hundreds of Discover posts or just our files in Discover that have been shared. So we're basically handing you hundreds of presets within Lightroom. So you can
does that automatically just happen then? That just saves as a preset with all your presets? If
I hit save as a preset, it will let me select, obviously, this is kind of familiar for those of you who've created presets before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's called Moody Sunset, Hugo Castro. That's the creator.
Right.
And you can choose which group to save it into. So it's in my saved presets. Once I hit save, I can go to an image of my own. That was my demo. So I can go to any image of my own, go into edit, presets,
Yeah.
and then down at the bottom is going to be my saved. I have many presets. I
You
play
have
with
a few.
presets a lot.
You have a couple of them.
So under saved presets, you should see Moody Sunset.
There it
Hugo
is.
Castro.
That's it. That's what you
and
just
I can
did.
just click it and apply it. And then, of course,
Right.
then fine tune it from
And
there.
then adjust
right?
it for the
Yeah.
image, right?
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, well, of course I want my shadows brought up. I want my blacks brought up a little bit, maybe. Yeah. But
That's unreal.
there we go. Yeah. That's learn and discover. And right now, anybody can submit their own images to Discover. So if you
Okay.
want to go in and share some of your edits and make them available, there's always the option also. I know some people are very particular about being open and giving with their presets. So there's always the option to not allow others to download it as a preset.
Right.
So if
Right,
that's how you as a user feel.
Well,
then
we're
you can
gonna
do
we're
that.
gonna be able to see the stingy people.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this was great.
Well, let me
You know
start
what? I
selecting
just can't imagine anyone complaining about subscribing to even Lightroom just by itself. It's just unreal what can be done. And to have those features built in where you can just learn and discover the way, and then have all those presets. If you like it, save it as a preset, then you have it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, there's just so much going on in Lightroom now. I was one of those holdouts for a long time. I was, because I was a Lightroom Classic user for 11 years
Yeah.
or so before.
Kind of where I'm at. It's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay. So.
But I can see the wisdom.
Yeah. Over time, I just had fewer and fewer reasons to not make the switch. And I think, honestly, so we don't encourage this at all, but it's possible to utilize both. If anybody's listening, don't do that. I'm not recommending that. Adobe doesn't recommend that because it's very, very confusing, right?
Right.
As somebody, because I know and understand what's happening, I felt a little bit more comfortable doing it. But even for me, it was slightly confusing as well. But for a long time, I was just doing both. I was importing images into both separately so I could have them both. But it's super confusing. Don't do that. What sealed the deal for me to finally make the transition and no longer import images into Classic sort of also all the time is having my baby. Because I spent so much time with him, just like holding him while he slept or nursing him or just being in the bed with him while he was, like not sleeping on his own and needed me to be there with him.
Of course.
I could edit all my full res raw files on my phone.
On your phone.
While I was breastfeeding, right? It was just amazing. Like I could literally edit images for clients or any, while I was taking care of my baby at the same time.
Yeah.
So
with like one hand even
so
when you
flexible.
needed to, right?
Yeah,
just
it's
like
so
doing this
flexible.
and then you have the baby. Oh, I picture it. That's a beautiful scene.
Yeah, it's so fun. So, but that was like, I needed a reason to stop doing it the way that I was doing it.
Yep.
And it's one of those, like, you just have to take the plunge, just jump in. And of course we always say like, Lightroom isn't for everybody. Some people are absolutely going to benefit from Classic and need the functionality within Classic that's not in Lightroom. And that's okay because Lightroom Classic is not going anywhere. So
that's actually really good to hear. I wasn't going to ask you that because I didn't want to put you in a weird, precarious position, but I want to tell you that for a long time, I've been hearing from various probably grumpy old men like myself that like they're going to get rid of Lightroom Classic and we're going to be forced to, and that's not my, that's not where I'm at. Like I understand that things move on and I can definitely see the reasons to support Lightroom. And to really make the jump, I think is what it comes down to. You just kind of have to jump, right?
Yeah. If it makes sense for you. Yeah.
Right. Of course. But I do appreciate you saying that because that will give some people maybe a little bit of ease on their minds where they don't have to worry about it disappearing anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a huge concern that people have. We hear it all
Yeah.
the time. We get that question all the time.
Yeah.
And, we have no plans to get rid of it. We are absolutely supporting it.
Good.
And I mean, we're still adding new features, right? Like we just added
Right.
these new features. Most of what I just showed you, unless it required Adobe Sensei, like the best photos
Right.
feature, all of those new features were also introduced to
Also
Lightroom
in
Classic
Classic.
this week.
Right.
So yeah.
Thank you very much. Hey, tell me this, where can people go to find all about you and see all your stuff and learn more about you?
Instagram is where I'm most active. So my username there is P, the letter P, Ketron. And I'm also at peiketron.com, less well updated, but there's more info there in terms of like the other types of photography I do, but also a lot of the teaching and speaking stuff that I do, you can find on there
Right.
as well.
Thank you for your time and your instruction and your wisdom.
Of
It was
course.
most enlightening, and I learned a lot, and my mindset has maybe shifted a little bit.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'm happy. I was happy to be here, happy to share, and I'm glad we could make this happen.
Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this conversation presented by White House Custom Color on YouTube. Be sure to check out our other content and click that subscribe button right there. Right. Right there. It's there somewhere.